All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are digging in to Chapter 3, Psychometric Considerations in Diagnosis and Evaluation from the book SLP 524. And look, our goal here is simple, to arm you with the tools to tell a good, useful test from a piece of garbage. And you need to pay attention, because using the wrong tool doesn't just give you a bad number. It can actually mess up someone's life. So, to kick things off, let's play a little game. Imagine I'm trying to sell you a brand new diagnostic test. You're a professional, you need the best stuff on the market to do your job, so I roll up and I tell you about my hot new product. So first off, the people who actually give the test, they can't even agree on what a right answer is. Yeah. Oh, and get this, your clients, they're going to score totally differently every single time they take it. The manual is a mess, super vague. It doesn't really test what it says it does. And the normal group we based it on, just a handful of kids from one tiny, weirdly specific neighborhood. So, you buying? No way, right? You tell me to get lost, and you'd be right to. But here is the absolutely insane part. A ton, and I mean a ton, of the big-name formal tests that people use every single day in speech and language pathology have these exact same problems. It's just wild. And that's exactly why we're talking about this. Because when a bad test gets used, real people get the wrong diagnosis. They get slapped with a label that isn't true, and they get treatment they don't need. It falls on you, the clinician, the consumer, to be the gatekeeper and spot the scams. So let's get you ready to do that. So, how do you spot the garbage? Well, it really boils down to two golden rules. Every single test that's worth anything, I don't care if it's for language, for IQ, for whatever, it has to pass these two fundamental checks. These are the absolute 100% non-negotiables. First up is validity. Honestly, if you forget everything else, remember this one. This is the single most important question you can ask about any test. It is the whole ballgame. To put it as simply as possible, is the test actually measuring what it says it's measuring? If a test manual says it's for, I don't know, language skills, it had better be measuring language skills. It's like using your bathroom skill to measure how tall you are. Sure, you'll get a number, and maybe it's even the same number every time, but it's measuring the wrong damn thing. If a test isn't valid, it's completely useless, period. Okay, golden rule number 2, reliability. This one is all about consistency. It's about stability. Can you trust the score you get today to be pretty much the same score you'd get tomorrow or next week? Let's go back to that bathroom scale. If you step on it and it says 150, then 2 minutes later it says 210, and then it says 95, you're throwing that thing in the trash, right? Because it's unreliable. It's the exact same for a diagnostic test. If a person's score is all over the map every time they take it, then that score is just statistical noise. It means nothing. All right, so let's say you've done your homework. You found a test that's actually valid and reliable. Awesome. But now you get the results. You get a score, a number. And this is where the next level of the game begins, because there are all sorts of traps hidden in the numbers. You've got to know how not to get played. So you've probably seen this shape before, right? It's the bell curve or the normal curve. Basically, when you test a whole bunch of people on almost anything, the scores naturally fall into this shape. You get a big clump of people right in the middle, around the average, and then fewer and fewer people out at the super high and super low ends. Now, to actually make sense of that curve, we have to chop it up into pieces using tools like standard deviations. All that really is a way to measure how far away from the average someone's score is. It lets us pinpoint exactly where one person stands compared to everybody else. So, if a score is way out there, like 2 standard deviations below the average, that's a huge red flag. If it's near the middle, well, it's average. So those standard scores, they're legit, they're useful. But a lot of test makers will throw in another kind of score. And this one, it looks so simple. It sounds so easy to explain to a worried parent. But I'm telling you, it is the single most misleading and dangerous number on that entire score report. And here it is, age equivalent scores. This is the big one. It's when you see a line that says something like, your 9-year-old is performing at a 7-year-old level. Sounds clear, sounds really bad, right? It's a total trap. Let me be crystal clear about why these scores are absolute garbage. That 9-year-old did not perform like a 7-year-old. All it means is they got the same number of questions right as the average 7-year-old. They could have gotten completely different questions right to get that score. It also invents this idea of an average kid at each age, which is a total fantasy. There's a huge range of what's normal for any age group, and these scores just ignore that. Bottom line, every expert in the field will tell you these scores are useless at best and dangerously misleading at worst. Okay, now for the million-dollar question. We've talked about what a test measures and if it's consistent, but does the damn thing actually do its main job? Can it accurately tell the difference between people who have a disorder and people who don't? So think about it this way. Any test can have 4 results. You've got your 2 wins, a true positive, where you correctly flag someone who has the disorder, and a true negative, where you correctly give the all clear to someone who's fine. And then you have the 2 massive failures, a false positive, where you label a healthy person as having a disorder, and a false negative, where you completely miss someone who actually needs your help. And this brings us to 2 super important ideas, sensitivity and specificity. Sensitivity is just, how good is the test at catching everybody who actually has the disorder? Specificity is the flip side. How good is the test at correctly identifying the people who do not have the disorder? Any decent test has to be great at both. Like the gold standard is over 90% for each. But here's where it gets really messy. In the real world, the test scores for people with a disorder and people without one almost always overlap. There's no clean separation. So the test maker has to decide, where do we draw the line? Where do we set the cutoff score for passing or failing? If you set it here at point A, sure, you won't mislabel anyone, but you're going to miss a ton of people who need help. That's bad sensitivity. But if you set it over at point B, you'll catch everyone, but you'll also misdiagnose a whole bunch of perfectly healthy people. That's bad specificity. It's a tightrope walk with huge consequences. Okay, for this last part, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. This might just be the single biggest, most destructive problem in all of standardized testing. And that's the problem of bias. Look, for a test to be fair, the group of people they use to create the average scores, that's called the norming sample, it has to look like the people you're actually giving the test to. Most modern tests will tell you they tried to match the national census data, something like what you're seeing here. But here is the massive fatal flaw in that logic. A national average is basically useless on the ground. A nationally representative sample might be, say, about 13% African American. Okay, but what if you're working in Mississippi, where the population is 37% African American? Or what if you're in Detroit, where it's over 82%? That so-called normal sample doesn't represent your community at all. So what happens? It's a disaster. You end up taking a test that was built for and normed on mostly white, middle-class kids who speak standard American English, and you give it to kids in a diverse city school. And guess what? They score lower. Not because there's anything wrong with them, but because the test itself is biased. It's not built for their culture, their dialect, or their life experiences. This is how we end up with this massive systemic problem of minority kids being over-identified for special education. So I want to leave you with this. A score on a piece of paper is not a scientific fact. It's not the truth. It is a tiny sample of a person's behavior on one particular day, measured with a tool we know is flawed, and then compared against a normal group that might not be normal for them in the first place. Knowing this and questioning these tools isn't just a good idea. It is your fundamental responsibility as a professional. You have to be a critical consumer to avoid doing real harm.